The Galactic Council chamber hummed with energy from 1,000 worlds, and Ambassador Kelrick stood before everyone with his crystalline body catching light and throwing patterns on the walls, and he spoke through translation devices. The human quarantine zone remains absolute, he said, and for 300 cycles no vessel has crossed the boundary, and the treaty has held young cadets from Threxia whispered in the viewing gallery. But Commander Vectos silenced them with a gesture, because these children knew nothing of the war and had been born into a galaxy that feared empty space more than any living threat. Kelrix continued and told the Council that the Zendari Collective wanted exploration rights near human space because they believed humans were extinct. Ambassador Urith of the Zendari rose with forearms moving gracefully and said they wasted resources maintaining a blockade around lifeless worlds, and their scans showed no energy signatures or transmissions or fleet movements. She argued humans had destroyed themselves and the galaxy feared ghosts. Kelrix flashed deep red, which was a warning color, and said Urith had not been there and had not witnessed what humans became when pushed too far. Urith called it stories and legends, to frighten children. Commander Vectos felt his blood chill because he had been there as a junior tactical officer aboard the dreadnought Infinite Reach during the final engagement at Proxima Gate, and the memories haunted him. Kelrix activated the holographic display and an ancient recording began with degraded quality, but still clear enough. This is the last verified contact with human forces, he said quietly, and it shows the Battle of Proxima Gate on Day 7. The hologram showed a fleet battle unlike anything the younger delegates had seen, and human vessels moved with precision that defied logic, and they accepted catastrophic damage to deliver killing blows, and they rammed dreadnoughts at relativistic speeds and turned destroyed ships into kinetic weapons. The final moments made even skeptical delegates fall silent. A human destroyer called Pittsburgh had been cut in half by plasma fire and should have been dead, but the forward section rotated on thrusters and fired remaining weapons into the bridge of eternal glory. The transmission followed in audio only and translated from English, and it was the Pittsburgh captain saying they wanted to see what monsters humans could be, and now they found out. The recording ended as Pittsburgh's reactor detonated and took eternal glory with it. The chamber stayed silent. Chancellor Morveth spoke and said the treaty stands and human territory remains forbidden because they learned at terrible cost what happens when you corner a species with nothing to lose. He said their silence should be their monument and their empty space their victory, and the galaxy would not disturb them again. Ureth protested, but Morveth declared the discussion over. Commander Vectos gathered his cadets and one named Lyra asked what made humans so dangerous when they had less technology and smaller numbers. Vectos looked at the sealed star charts marking human territory in red. He said humans had something they underestimated, and they knew how to hate with cold calculating hatred beyond simple aggression. And when the galaxy tried genocide, they became what they needed to survive, and that terrified everyone. Lyra asked if humans were really extinct. Vectos remembered the final human transmission before Proxima Gate closed forever, saying, "Leave us alone and we leave you alone, but come back and no one survives to make that mistake again." He said he hoped they were extinct for everyone's sake, but deep inside he doubted it, because humans did not seem like species that simply gave up and died. They were the kind that went quiet and healed wounds and remembered. That was far more frightening than any war fleet. The young students looked at the Forbidden Zone and wondered what waited in the darkness. 300 years of silence could mean peace or 300 years of preparation. Every species that fought knew the truth, even if they never spoke. Humans had not been defeated, and the treaty was not victory, but surrender, in diplomatic language. The exclusion zone existed because humanity demanded it, and the galaxy agreed because the alternative was unthinkable. Somewhere in that forbidden territory, something might still be alive, and watching and waiting. Every ship passing near the boundary felt that weight. The universe tried to destroy humanity and failed. Now the universe lived with consequences. The Forbidden Zone remained on every chart, as a reminder that some enemies were too dangerous to defeat and too determined to break. 300 years meant nothing with a species that proved it would never stop fighting. The galaxy learned its lesson at cost of millions of lives. Human territory was forbidden. The treaty would hold, because nobody wanted to discover what happened if it did not. Commander Vectos dismissed his students and walked to the observation window overlooking the chamber floor. Below him, delegates filed out and returned to their worlds and their comfortable lives. They did not understand. They had not seen human soldiers fighting in vacuum with nothing but hand weapons. They had not watched human ships sacrifice themselves with precision and purpose. They had not heard the laughter of dying humans who took their enemies with them. The younger generation believed the sanitized history. They believed humans were aggressive primitives who self-destructed. They did not know the truth, that humanity had been peaceful until cornered, that humanity had tried diplomacy until ignored, that humanity had accepted restrictions until they became chains. The galaxy had pushed and pushed and pushed, and when humans finally pushed back, it was with force the galaxy could not comprehend. Not because humans were more advanced, but because humans were more willing to sacrifice everything, willing to turn their bodies into weapons, willing to die if it meant taking the enemy with them. That willingness had terrified the galactic fleet more than any technology. Because you could defend against weapons, but you could not defend against determination. Vectos had watched his commanding officer break down after Proxima Gate. The officer had commanded fleets for 50 years and never lost composure. But after 7 days fighting humans, he wept openly. He kept saying they won't stop and they just won't stop. And he was right. Humans did not stop. Not when outnumbered, not when outgunned, not when facing certain death. They kept fighting. And that was why the treaty existed. Not because the galaxy won, but because the galaxy could not afford to keep fighting. The cost was too high, not in ships or resources, but in will. The galaxy's will broke first, and humans knew it. That final transmission was not a plea for peace. It was a statement of terms. Leave us alone, or we continue. The galaxy chose to leave them alone. Vectos turned from the window and walked the empty corridors. He passed memorial walls listing the dead from the war, millions of names, from dozens of species, all because the galaxy refused to share space with humans, all because economic interest demanded human removal, all because fear of competition became fear of existence. The galaxy created its own nightmare, and now lived with the consequences. Human territory forbidden, not by galactic law, but by human demand, and the galaxy had no choice but to agree. Vectos reached his quarters and sat in darkness. Tomorrow he would teach cadets about fleet tactics, but he would not teach them about humans. That knowledge was restricted. Only those who fought knew the truth, and they kept it locked away. Because knowing what humans were capable of, knowing what they became when cornered, knowing they might still be out there, that knowledge made sleep difficult. Vectos closed his eyes and saw Pittsburgh's captain, heard his laughter. As death approached, that sound haunted every veteran. The sound of someone who had nothing left to lose and found freedom in that emptiness. That was what made humans dangerous. Not their technology, not their tactics, but their absolute refusal to submit even to death itself. Captain Xyloth guided his salvage vessel Prophet's Edge through the debris field at the exclusion zone border, and his scanner showed promising readings ahead. The derelict station hung in space like a prize waiting to be claimed, and Xyloth calculated the profit margins in his head. His first mate Corvix warned they were close to the boundary. But Xyloth dismissed the concern because patrol ships were days away, and 3 centuries had passed since anyone cared about human space. The station grew, larger on their view screen, and it was a massive wheel-shaped structure, scarred by ancient weapons fire, but mostly intact. Corvix reported faint power signatures, and Xyloth said it was just automated backup systems still running after all these years. They docked at an airlock, and Xyloth led 4 crew members inside wearing environmental suits and carrying cutting equipment. The interior was dark and frozen and silent like a tomb. Xyloth ordered his team to spread out and salvage anything valuable, and he headed toward the command center where data cores might still hold sellable information. The command center door resisted, but his plasma cutter burned through, and inside he found a surprisingly preserved room. A human corpse sat frozen. At the controls and the nameplate read, Commander Garrett Kane. Xyloth reached for the terminal to access the databanks. The moment his gloved hand touched the console, every light in the station blazed to life. Automated systems activated with mechanical precision and holographic displays flickered on, showing station schematics and weapon systems. A voice spoke in translated English and said, "Unauthorized access detected, and defensive protocols now." Active Xyloth's crew started screaming over the communication channel. Doors were sealing throughout the station, and something was moving in the corridors, and crew members yelled. They were trapped. Xyloth ran for the exit, but the command center door slammed shut and locked through the small window. He saw figures moving in the hallway. They were humanoid and wore faded military environmental suits but moved with mechanical stiffness. Combat automatons, war machines designed to eliminate borders. The screaming on the comm channels intensified and then cut off one by one. Xyloth was alone. The main display activated and showed a recording of Commander Kane. When he was alive, Kane said anyone seeing this message had made a fatal error, because this station was quarantined not for radiation or disease but for what humanity became. Behind Kane, other humans were visible, looking exhausted and hollow. Kane explained the siege of Saul lasted 47 days, and they ran out of missiles by day 20 and reactor fuel by day 30, and by day 40 fought on pure hatred. His expression showed no emotion. They created weapons that violated every treaty, he said, but no longer cared because the galaxy was exterminating them, so they became exterminators. The hologram showed human soldiers deploying strange devices in zero gravity. Combat Kane said the automatons were programmed to defend until nothing biological remained aboard, and they needed no food or air or rest. Xyloth frantically tried overriding door controls, but the system rejected. Every attempt, Kane continued and said this was one of thousands of protected sites, and every piece of wreckage in human territory had automated defenses. The recording paused and Kane leaned closer. He said salvagers came seeking treasure but found only warnings, and human territory was forbidden because humans built defenses that outlasted their makers. The recording ended behind Xyloth. The ventilation grates opened and small spider-like machines dropped out. Combat nanites, microscopic swarm. Weapons designed to disassemble living tissue. Xyloth screamed as they surrounded him. 3 days later, patrol vessel Vigilant arrived at the coordinates. Commander Vectos led the boarding team and found Prophet's Edge intact, but empty, inside the derelict station. They located Xyloth's recorder. Vectos watched the final recording and saw everything that happened. He ordered the station sealed and a warning beacon deployed and expanded the exclusion zone by 50 light-years. His subordinate questioned the decision and said the council would call them paranoid. Vectos stared at the frozen body of Commander Kane still sitting at his post. The council did not fight humans, he said, and they do not understand that humanity turned their entire territory into a weapon that maintains itself. He explained they were not expanding the zone because they feared the living, but because they feared the dead. Even in death, humans still fought their war. The patrol ship departed and left the station sealed with its eternal guardian. Commander Kane remained at his post, still defending, still warning, still protecting human territory. The beacon transmitted its message in all galactic languages. This site is protected by automated defense systems. Human territory is forbidden by treaty. Violators will be eliminated, no exceptions. The message repeated endlessly into the void. Other salvagers heard the story and spread the word. Stay away from human space. The dead still guard it. More incidents occurred over the following years. Every time someone ignored the warnings, every time someone thought 3 centuries meant safety, every time someone believed humans were truly gone, the automated defenses activated. Some salvagers escaped with warnings. Most did not. The galaxy learned, slowly but thoroughly. Human territory was not empty. It was defended by machines that never tired and never forgot their purpose, by systems that maintained themselves through centuries, by weapons that waited patiently for targets. The humans who built them were gone, or silent, but their defenses remained perfect and eternal and absolutely lethal. Vectos compiled reports from all the incidents. He presented them to the council with explicit recommendations: increase the exclusion zone, increase patrol frequency, increase penalties for violations. Make examples of those who ignore warnings, the council agreed reluctantly. They still did not fully understand, but they understood. Enough. Human space was dangerous, not because of living humans, but because of what they left behind: automated war machines that knew only one purpose: defend human territory, eliminate intruders, continue forever. Vectos updated training materials for new patrol officers. He included footage from various incidents. He showed them what happened to those who trespassed. He made them understand the stakes. This is not about ancient history, he told each class. This is about active defenses that are still operational. Humans built them to last, and they are lasting. Some cadets asked if humans were really gone. Vectos said he did not know. No one knew, but it did not matter. The defenses were there, real and functional and deadly. Whether humans survived somewhere or went extinct made no difference. Their legacy remained. Their fortress still stood. Their weapons still fired. That was the reality. That was what the galaxy had to accept. Human territory was forbidden, not by council decree, but by automated guardians that would never stop, never question, never hesitate. They would defend their territory until the stars burned out, and the galaxy had learned to respect that, to fear that, to avoid that, because the cost of trespassing was death swift and certain and mechanical. No mercy, no negotiation, no second chances, just elimination. That was the human legacy. Not their art or culture or diplomacy, but their ability to build defenses that outlasted them, to create weapons that needed no operators, to turn their entire territory into an automated fortress. The galaxy had tried to destroy them, and in response they built something the galaxy could not overcome, not through force, not through time, not through anything. The defenses would remain forever, and the galaxy would remember. Forever, stay out of human space. The dead are still watching. Researcher Mirren spent decades studying classified files in the Galactic Historical Institute, and she was Filari, which meant her species valued truth above comfort. The human war had been sanitized and censored and officially closed, but Mirren believed forgotten history would repeat itself. Her assistant Krell complained about another denied access request and said that was 47 files blocked. Mirren wondered why someone hid the truth when humans were supposedly extinct. Krell suggested, maybe humans were not extinct. That night, Mirren received an encrypted message with coordinates and instructions to come alone and learn truth. She went despite every warning instinct. The coordinates led to a forgotten sub-level that officially did not exist. The door opened without her touching it. Inside, former High Chancellor Morveth waited among active displays showing human data. Morveth said someone needed to know truth before his generation died. Mirren asked what this place was. Morveth called it the real archive containing everything the council hid about humanity. He activated displays showing human cities and faces and children. They told themselves a lie, he said, and claimed they fought because humans were dangerous. But the truth was, they feared human competition. Mirren watched footage showing peaceful first contact and humanity eager to join galactic civilization. She asked what changed. Morveth answered with one word, which was economics. Human industry was too efficient, and their workers too driven. And within 50 cycles they outcompeted established corporations and their culture spread rapidly. He showed protests and politicians demanding restrictions. Elder species felt threatened. He explained not militarily, but economically and culturally, so they manufactured a crisis and claimed humans were inherently violent and passed restrictive laws. Mirren felt sick and said they cornered humanity. Morveth said they did worse because when humans protested peacefully, they arrested leaders, and when humans sued in courts they dismissed claims, and when humans fought back, they used it as proof of aggression. Footage showed galactic forces attacking human colonies with orbital bombardments and massive civilian casualties. They tried to break them, he said, and thought overwhelming force would make humans surrender. But they were completely wrong. The display showed human response starting with conventional resistance but escalating as the war continued. Mirren watched in horror as humans developed species-specific weapons and psychological warfare and stopped taking prisoners. The Battle of Proxima Gate was supposed to end it, Morveth explained, and they sent 15,000 ships outnumbering humans, 100 to 1 the IR. Footage showed brutal combat with human ships accepting death to deal damage and using tactics no sane commander would consider. By day 7 they lost 4,000 vessels, Morveth said, while humans lost everything but kept fighting with individual soldiers in environmental suits boarding ships and fighting deck to deck. Final footage showed a dying human soldier who sabotaged a dreadnought reactor. And as the ship broke apart, he was laughing. They could not break human will. Morveth said quietly, because no matter how many died, humans kept fighting not to win but to make the galaxy regret starting. The war. Mirren asked what happened, because the war ended with a treaty. Morveth said simply that the galaxy surrendered. Mirren stared in shock and started to say the history recorded something different. The history is a lie. Morveth interrupted, and the truth is they sued for peace because their populations turned against the war, and the economic cost was unsustainable, and humans made clear they would never stop. He showed the actual treaty terms. They agreed to leave human territory and never return. He explained, and in exchange, humans would not expand or pursue retribution, and the exclusion zone was humanity's idea. Mirren asked about the silence for 300 years. Morveth smiled sadly and said, maybe humans meant it and turned inward, or maybe they are watching to ensure the treaty holds. He deactivated displays and said he spent 50 years maintaining this archive because the Council wanted everyone believing humans were monsters who destroyed themselves. But the real monsters were those who attempted genocide. Mirren asked, why tell her? Morveth said she was young enough to see what comes next and he was dying but needed someone to carry this truth forward. She said the Council would never allow publication. Morveth agreed but said someday someone would breach the zone and find proof humans survived. And when that happened, the galaxy needed to remember what they did and why humans might not be friendly. He handed her a data crystal containing everything, including unedited footage and real casualty figures and treaty terms. Mirren took it feeling its weight. She asked quietly what Morveth thought humans were doing, if still alive. He looked toward star charts marking the Forbidden Zone. If he were human, he said he would be remembering and preparing and ensuring, if the galaxy returned, they would regret it more than starting the first war. 300 years of silence does not mean peace. He continued because it might mean 300 years perfecting hatred into something unimaginable. Mirren left carrying truth about humanity. She could not shake the feeling that somewhere in darkness, humans were still. They're still watching, still remembering, still waiting. She established secret backups of the archive, distributed encrypted copies to trusted colleagues, built a network of historians who knew truth. The Council discovered her activities and tried suppression, but information had spread too far. Debates erupted in academic circles. Some demanded truth be revealed. Others wanted it buried deeper. The Council held emergency sessions. They could not allow the truth about the war to become public knowledge, not when they had built 3 centuries of lies on top of it, but they also could not completely suppress it without confirming its validity. So they compromised. They allowed limited academic access under strict controls, published sanitized versions that admitted some wrongdoing, but still maintained the core lie that humanity was extinct. Mirren continued her work despite official pressure. She knew truth mattered more than her career, more than her safety, more than Council approval. Future generations deserved to know what really happened, why human territory was forbidden, what the galaxy had done, what humanity became in response. She compiled comprehensive histories, detailed analyses of every battle, interviews with surviving veterans, reconstructions of political decisions, all of it preserved and distributed. Years passed. Mirren grew old. Her work became respected despite official disapproval. Students sought her out. Veterans confided in her. Even some Council members privately thanked her, because truth had power and lies eventually crumbled. The official history still claimed human extinction, but fewer people believed it. The Forbidden Zone remained. But now people understood why. Not because of Council decree, but because humanity demanded it, and the galaxy had agreed. Because the alternative was continuation of a war, They could not win. Mirren published her final work at age 80, a comprehensive history titled, What We Did to Them. The council tried to ban it, but it spread too quickly. Every species read it, every world discussed. Yet the comfortable lies dissolved, and uncomfortable truth emerged. The galaxy had attempted genocide, failed, and lived in fear ever since. Not fear of what humans were, but fear of what the galaxy made them become. Mirren died knowing her work was complete. Truth would survive, even if she did not, and future generations would learn, would understand, would remember, that human territory was forbidden. Not because humans were monsters, but because the galaxy created monsters and could not control what they created. The archive remained growing, expanding truth, building upon truth, until no one could deny it anymore. The galaxy tried to destroy humanity. Humanity survived, and the galaxy never forgot the cost of trying and failing and having to surrender to a species they had tried to exterminate. That was the truth. That was the reality. That was why human territory stayed forbidden forever. Lieutenant Vex monitored deep space sensors at Station Sentinel-9 and watched the exclusion zone boundary for anomalies that never appeared. Until today. He called Commander Irana with voice cracking and said there was a signal from inside the zone. Irana moved to his station, expecting another false reading. She stopped when she saw the data. That is a live transmission, she said with high power across multiple frequencies directed at us. The command crew gathered around displays. After 300 years of silence. Something in human territory was communicating. Junior analyst Misk asked if it could be survivors. Irana ordered the transmission played. The communications officer hesitated and cited protocols requiring fleet command approval. Irana said to play it now. The transmission began with audio only and crystal clear despite vast distance. A human voice spoke in English, and translation rendered it into Galactic Standard. This is Forward Station Delta, broadcasting from human territorial space, and we are aware of your monitoring posts and have been aware for some time. The crew exchanged nervous glances. The voice continued calmly and said, For 317 years, you honored the treaty after Proxima Gate, and we acknowledge. This but recent unauthorized incursions violated our agreement. Irana felt cold because she knew about disappeared scavenger ships. The voice clarified this was not a threat but a reminder that human territory was forbidden. Absolutely. A star map appeared, showing dozens of red markers in the zone. These are automated defense stations still operational, the voice explained, and they number in thousands, and each can sterilize a solar system if activated, and they remain dormant while the treaty holds. Irana watched with horror because the defensive network covered hundreds of light years. The voice asked why humans were breaking silence now and answered, it was escalation, because monitoring became more aggressive and scavengers more bold. The transmission paused and returned with steel in the tone. You tell your children we are extinct, the voice said, and teach them we destroyed ourselves, and this narrative lets you sleep peacefully believing the threat is gone. Another pause. We are not gone, the voice stated, and we are here watching and waiting and rebuilding, and we chose isolation not from defeat but from exhaustion, with war and politics and fighting for existence. Irana held her breath. Do not mistake our exhaustion for weakness, the voice warned, and do not mistake silence for surrender, because we are not the broken civilization you remember, but what came after, and we are harder and colder and more patient. The star map zoomed to Earth and Sol system. The planet thrived with lights and orbital structures and ships. We still remember what you did, the voice said, and every colony burned and every civilian ship destroyed and every child who died screaming, and we remember all of it. The display showed historical footage of galactic forces attacking human settlements. You tried to exterminate us because we were inconvenient and threatened your economy and were different. The voice continued, and you failed. But we learned a lesson about galactic civilization. The voice grew colder. You only respect strength and only honor treaties when you fear consequences. So we spent 3 centuries ensuring you fear us, and every defense station and weapon platform and self-replicating military technology from the war remains active, and we have added to them New markers appeared showing thousands more defensive positions. We turned our entire region into a fortress. The voice explained not to attack, but to ensure you can never attack us again. And if a single world is threatened, the entire network activates and will not stop until every aggressor is Ashvex whispered they were threatening. The galaxy, Irana said quietly. They were reminding why the treaty existed. The transmission reached its conclusion. We do not want war, the voice said with audible weariness, and we have had enough for 1,000 lifetimes, and we only want to be left alone and to exist without justifying that existence. A final image appeared showing a human male middle-aged in simple uniform with kind face but hard eyes. Name is Director Colin Hayes, he said, and I speak for the Terran Council governing human space, and this is formal notification that human territory remains forbidden and treaty terms are unchanged and non-negotiable. Hayes leaned forward gravely. We'll monitor future incursions, and automated vessels will be disabled and turned away. And piloted vessels get one warning before we respond with force. And we will not negotiate or debate, but only defend what is ours. He straightened for his final statement to the galaxy species. We bear no ill will, he said, and we moved past hatred to something harder, which is indifference, and you do not matter to us anymore. And your politics and economics and alliances mean nothing in human space, and we are separate and distinct and forever removed. Hayes delivered final words with absolute finality. Stay out, he said, because that is our only requirement, and failure to respect it means discovering why your ancestors feared us enough to write forbidden into galactic law. The transmission ended. Sentinel-9's command center stayed silent. Finally, Misk asked what they should do. Irana began composing urgent messages to Fleet Command and said they would send this immediately and pray the Council had wisdom to keep honoring the treaty. Vex asked if the Council would be wise. Irana looked at the star map and thousands of weapon platforms and thriving human civilization supposedly destroyed centuries ago. If they are smart? Yes, she answered, because Hayes proved humans were not silent from defeat, but because they were building and preparing and becoming something the galaxy cannot fight. She transmitted to Fleet Command and turned to her crew new standing orders. She announced, and any vessel approaching the boundary gets warned off with maximum priority and no exceptions, because the treaty holds, or the alternative is extinction. News spread through the galaxy within days. The Council convened an emergency session. Young species, who never knew the war, demanded details. Elder species who remembered refused to speak. The Council response was unanimous. The treaty would hold, the exclusion zone would be maintained. Human territory would remain forbidden, not from fear of extinct monsters, but because monsters were alive and spent 3 centuries becoming something worse than memory patrol routes were adjusted. Warning beacons were upgraded, penalties for violations were increased. Every spacer learned the new rules. Do not approach human space. Do not test the boundary. Do not assume silence means absence, because humans were there watching, waiting, ready. The galaxy settled into new understanding. Human territory was not empty. It was defended by living humans who remembered everything, who built fortress over centuries, who would not tolerate violations. The silence between humanity and galaxy was not peace. It was armistice maintained by mutual understanding. That fighting again would end both sides, so the treaty held, not from friendship, not from forgiveness, but from fear of what humans had become, of what they could do, of what they would do if provoked. The boundary markers were clear. The warning was explicit, the consequences were certain, and the galaxy finally understood, after 300 years, after countless violations, after Hayes reminded them human territory was forbidden, not by galactic choice but by human demand, and that demand would be respected, because the alternative was unthinkable. The transmission from Forward Station Delta played in military academies, near diplomatic schools and history classes. Everyone heard. Hayes, everyone understood his message. Stay out or face consequences. Simple, clear, final. The galaxy chose to stay out because wisdom finally prevailed and fear ensured compliance. Human territory remained forbidden. The silence continued, but now everyone knew. The silence was not emptiness. It was warning. and warnings should be heeded always. 50 years after Hayes' transmission, the galaxy lived in uneasy peace and the exclusion zone was respected absolutely, and new generations learned the rules without understanding why. But questions remained. On Colony World Nexus Prime scholars from dozen species gathered for academic conference about historical conflicts and modern diplomacy. Elderly researcher Mirren stood before them carrying secrets from Morveth decades ago. She announced she would tell complete truth about humanity and the unredacted history the Council had hidden, and some would not believe her. But everything was documented and verified. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Mirren activated the archive. Morveth preserved. Images showed peaceful first contact and early cooperation, and gradual deterioration. She said the galaxy claimed humans were aggressive, but truth was, the galaxy started the war and initiated hostilities and attempted genocide, and when humanity fought back, they were called monsters. She showed real footage, unedited and brutal, with attacks on colonies and civilian deaths and escalating violence, pushing humanity to extinction. Edge, a young Zendari student, stood and called it propaganda, because official history said something different. Mirren said official history was lies fabricated by victors to justify actions, and she had original documents and testimony from veterans and everything. The Council buried. She played Proxima Gate footage showing not aggression, but desperation, and showed the surrender, and treaty terms proving the galaxy sued for peace. Another student asked why this mattered now, because the war was centuries ago and humans were isolated. Mirren fixed him with hard stare and said they needed understanding why human territory was forbidden, not because humans were monsters, but because the galaxy made them into something uncontrollable. She showed Hayes' transmission and revelation that humanity survived and thrived and built something new for 50 years since this message. She said the galaxy respected boundaries not from honor but from fear, because they knew what waited if they crossed the line again. The audience was silent now. She said we did this, and every species here or their ancestors participated in attempted human destruction and declared them too dangerous and decided they needed elimination. And when humans refused to die quietly, the galaxy was shocked. She showed images of human soldiers and ships and determination. These people wanted only what every species wants, she explained, which was living freely and prospering and exploring stars. But the galaxy denied them that, and pushed them into corners. And when species have nothing to lose, they become what you feared. She showed projections of human technological development during isolation. In 350 years, humanity had time to advance, she said, and the galaxy did not know exactly what they became or what weapons they developed, but they knew humans had not been idle. She displayed theoretical models based on pre-war advancement rates. If humans continued developing at even half previous rate, she explained, they are likely centuries ahead now in weapons and starships and every survival field, because the galaxy forced them into fortress civilization, and they had centuries to perfect it. A Corthan military officer asked if Mirren suggested humans were threats, and if the galaxy should prepare for war. No, Mirren said firmly, and she suggested learning the lesson, which was leaving them alone and respecting boundaries and acknowledging the attempted destruction was wrong, and accepting the price was eternal vigilance. She deactivated displays and looked at young faces. Humans built their fortress not to attack, she said, but to ensure the galaxy could never attack them again. And they turned their civilization into warning about what happens when you try exterminating species, because they survive and adapt, and ensure you regret it forever. Her voice softened. Humans, do not hate us anymore, she continued, because Hayes said they moved beyond hate to indifference, and we simply do not matter to them, and in ways that is worse than anger. A young Filari student asked, what happened if someone violated the zone? And, if the treaty broke? Mirren stayed silent for a long moment. Then we discover what 350 years of human innovation produced, she answered, and given what they accomplished. With fraction of that time during war, she suspected the result would be extinction. She closed with final image showing boundary marker at human space edge with warning clear in every language, stating territory was forbidden by treaty, and violators would be met with lethal force. That marker is not protecting us from humans, she said, but protecting humans from us and reminding we already had chance to coexist peacefully and chose violence instead, and we do not get another chance. The conference ended in thoughtful silence. Students who arrived believing comfortable lies left with uncomfortable truths. In following weeks, Myron's presentation sparked controversy. The council attempted suppression, but data was distributed too widely. For first time in centuries, the galaxy confronted truth about human war. Some species demanded treaty renegotiation and communication establishment. Military analysts silenced them by pointing out humanity held all advantages now with fortified territory and unknown technology, and centuries of motivation. Any contact attempt would be viewed as attack. Prelude others argued for exclusion zone expansion and additional barriers. These proposals were rejected because they would violate treaty terms and potentially trigger response. The galaxy maintained status quo. The treaty held human territory remained forbidden. Myron lived another 30 years and saw generation grow with truth knowledge. She died peacefully, knowing real history would not be forgotten. 1,000 years after the war, the treaty still held. The exclusion zone remained inviolate. New species learned the rule immediately. Do not enter human space. Some asked why. Some wondered if humans still existed. Some doubted the stories. But those who knew and remembered and studied understood truth. Human territory was forbidden not because humanity was dead, but because they were alive and patient and watchful, and waiting to see if the galaxy learned its lesson. Somewhere in human space, depths on worlds the galaxy would never see, humanity lived and remembered the war and taught children history and maintained fortress from habit and necessity. They did not hate anymore, they simply moved on, but never forgot, and the galaxy for survival could never forget either. The silence between humanity and universe was not empty, but full of memory and warning and mutual understanding. A silence saying more than words. We fought once. We both survived. Let us never fight again, because next time there might be no survivors. 2,000 years after the war, a new message came from human space. It was anniversary transmission. A human female named Maya Jensen identified herself as Terran Council speaker to our galactic neighbors. She said, and 2,000 years ago, our species made choice, and after surviving your extermination attempt and after building defenses that could ensure your destruction, we chose peace. Not forgiveness because we remember, but peace. We chose building our own civilization, separate from yours, and exploring our own path and becoming something unique. This does not mean weakness because our defenses remain active and our fortress stands eternal. But we wanted you knowing we harbor no retribution plans. The young of your species are not responsible for ancestors' crimes, and we will not punish innocents for guilty. The treaty stands and human territory remains forbidden, but not from hatred, but from wisdom, because we learned at terrible cost that isolation is preferable to endless conflict. If in millennia to come you finally learn, building civilization, worthy of stars that does not see difference as threat and does not answer fear with genocide, then perhaps our descendants might speak again. But for now, silence serves us both. Stay safe, galactic neighbors. Learn from history. Choose peace where ancestors chose war. And remember, the universe is vast enough for all if we have wisdom to share it. The transmission ended with Earth view from orbit, blue jewel in darkness. Peaceful thriving. The galaxy watched and understood human territory would remain forbidden, not because humanity was dangerous, but because the galaxy finally learned every species deserves existing in peace. The lesson took genocide and war and 2 millennia to learn, but it was learned. The universe trembled no more with fear, but with understanding. Silence became not wall but bridge, a bridge no one would cross, but everyone knew existed, and that was enough.